Hi, Sound of Niagara podcast with Nate McMurray. I wanted to talk to some of you, or all of you, about yesterday. The death of Charlie Kirk, the horrific death of Charlie Kirk, and the horrific aftermath. Where do I begin? It is horrific because he was killed for his speech. Okay? People should not be murdered for the things they say. No, I am not a free speech absolutist. There is limits to all of our rights because they're dependent on other rights. And when your rights overlap and infringe on other people's rights or the exercise of your rights, there has to be some limits, right? Or if you're putting me in danger with the things you're saying. Charlie Kirk's commentary was often repulsive, horrible, mean, degrading, confusing. It was not illegal, all right? And I think the left forgot that in public spaces, people are allowed to say repulsive things. Indeed, that is the sign of a healthy society. Killing him for what he's saying is a true evil, an anti-democratic, anti-freedom move, all right? That's it, okay? And for those out there who are happy he's dead or happy he was killed, shame on you. I mean, shame on you. Now, there's nothing I said or I will say in this podcast to celebrate Charlie Kirk's speech. The things he said, they were awful and often confusing. I don't even think his debate style was strong. He would just do this thing where he would just, no matter what you said in response, he'd be like, because the Bible says so. He would just say some cliche phrase that wasn't backed by evidence or logic to shut you down. If you go back and watch his debates, he was not a good debater. Look what happened to him when he went to Oxford. He was destroyed. That's how you deal with repulsive speech. You expose it to the sunlight. You create antibodies. You create an immunity to it. I mean, for years and years and years in our country, we understood this. If David Duke wanted to speak at a college campus, people would protest him, and they had the right to do so, but nobody said you're not allowed to speak. Or if they did, it usually just made him stronger. Like the reactions to Charlie Kirk made him stronger. There's something about human nature when you tell somebody no, they want to do it. And you made him an anti-hero. And then you made him a full-fledged hero by not addressing him. One of the problems I have with the left is they haven't debated. I mean, Kamala Harris did a great job against Trump in her debate. A fantastic job, probably better than anybody. Certainly Joe Biden didn't. But what Kamala Harris did not do is she did not go on debates on talk shows or podcasts. She did not expose herself to the type of criticism that you need to have a democracy work. She did not challenge people like Charlie Kirk directly, or we did not as a party or as a movement or whatever else. So he became lionized. It was a huge mistake. Public spaces should be open to repulsive ideas. Okay? I cannot say that more simply. I've been saying it for years. Public spaces should be open to even the most repulsive ideas because that's how you defeat repulsive ideas. You do not defeat repulsive ideas by pretending they don't exist. Or by saying, shame, shame, you're not allowed to say that, you're not allowed to come here. It doesn't work. The only way that this works is if you believe in democracy and believe in the marketplace of ideas. Now, I'm fully aware it's more difficult in a period of misinformation. Carolyn Levitt, if Trump came to her and said, hey, tell the people I never golfed before, she would go on TV the next day and say, there's no evidence that he's ever been golfing. All those tapes are fake. It's AI. I get it. We live in an era of complete misinformation amplified by the internet. I get it. It doesn't help to again, lionize or aggrandize people like Charlie Kirk, who wasn't very smart. I'm sorry, he wasn't. I mean, traditionally smart. He was not a great intellectual. He's a great organizer. a great communicator, but his debate skills were very poor. He basically just yelled at people. He yelled at people and he spoke over them and just said things that just weren't true. I mean, how many debates did I have to watch towards the end of his life where he just lost outright because people caught on, oh, the way you deal with this guy is you expose him. That doesn't mean I'm not horrified by his death. He's a 31-year-old guy who got shot in the neck. It was one of the most horrific things I ever saw. And I'm worried that in the minutes following it, I saw memes of his dead body or dying body driving a car or flying a plane. I mean, people think we've lost touch with reality. A person died. And for those on the left who say, well, he deserves it, let's game on, fight fire with fire, good luck. I can't tell you how many lefties who talk like this have never been in a fight. Have you ever been in a fight before, for real? Do you know what a punch feels like? Do you know what it feels like to have your arm bent in a position where it's breaking? It isn't fun. And let me tell you, be careful what you wish for. If you wish for, listen, I get that the right wants a fight, but do not instigate that fight. Do not give them what they want. I get that Charlie Kirk said that empathy is a weakness, but by echoing that and saying that we're not going to show you empathy, Charlie, in this horrific death, all you're doing is becoming his follower. And I hear the arguments now. Well, we learned that when they go high, go low. When they go low, we go high. It doesn't work. You're right. I'm not saying that we should fight with like Marcus of Queensberry rules. We have to fight and fight dirty sometimes. Not lie or cheat, but get in the mud and fight. But that doesn't mean I advocate for violence. And I'm the guy that years ago said, why are the Democrats so timid? Why aren't they, this go high stuff doesn't work. It works when you're dealing with an opponent that has a shred of decency in them. But I never would advocate for physical violence. And I used to get scolded like, oh, you got to be more high-minded like Michelle Obama. No, I thought it was wrong. I told people it's not going to work. People are not going to respond to us snubbing their nose at them and not addressing the issues at hand because we think we're better or we act like we can follow these higher standards when we're in the middle of the fight. When you're in a fight, you got to fight. But that doesn't mean violence. I do not advocate for violence. It isn't going to work. I hate to break it to you. It's not going to work. You are not going to win a war. Anybody. No one's going to win. Most wars end in stalemates or in ugly outcomes. And if you've been in a real fight, you realize nobody really wins. Everyone comes out with a mashed up face like hamburger. Nobody really wins. Okay? It doesn't work like that. Now, is Charlie Kirk a martyr? Heck no. Charlie Kirk is not a martyr. A martyr is someone who dies for his beliefs because he's trying to advocate for those beliefs. He already's got what he wants. There's guns everywhere in this country. It's like saying he's a martyr is like saying that someone who smokes every day and say, I don't care if I die from lung cancer, dies from lung cancer. And then you say, oh, he's a martyr for the, anti-lung cancer movement. No, he's for lung cancer. Charlie Kirk was for gun deaths. That's his own words. That's not me twisting his words. That's what he said. He was for gun deaths. He got exactly what he wanted. He advocated for something that he got. And now that's a horrible way to look at it because it's so uncomfortable, but that's exactly what happened. It's like calling him a martyr is like saying someone who loves fireworks and says we should embrace fully the dangers of fireworks, blows their head off with a firecracker, and then says, I'm a martyr. That's not what a martyr is. A martyr is a Christian who is persecuted for their beliefs and then is killed for those beliefs. That's an example of a martyr. A martyr isn't somebody who gets what they want, says that they like the results, and then dies from those results. That is not a martyr. So it is sad that he died, but this guy is not a martyr. He should not be venerated for his absolutely insane beliefs. Let's take a look at some of those beliefs. I know I didn't do this yesterday. I felt an incredible pall of sadness because how could you not? This young guy got killed. Are you a sicko? You like to clap when somebody dies? a fellow American. I don't care. Like, I get it. I do not agree with. If you can have empathy for people that are criminals or whatever else, certainly you can have empathy for your political foe, even if he's preaching hatred. I'm sorry, that's what it means to be a human being, is to show empathy even when it's not exactly welcomed, all right? Or even when it's not exactly earned. That is what it means to be a human.
When you have an armed citizenry and you won't have a single gun death. That is nonsense. It's drivel. But I think it's worth it. I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternate universe.
I'm sorry if I see a black pilot.
I live in that universe. I do not think it's acceptable to have people shot in the neck from 200 yards away. And by the way, all you gun people, the crowd is open carry place, right? Everyone could have a gun there. These are all gun enthusiasts, to put it nicely. What we would call sometimes gun nuts. Sorry, these are people that worship guns and believe that gun ownership is integral to national citizenship. And they had guns. The argument has been for years, a good guy with a gun is the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun. Now, Charlie Kirk could have been wearing a full bulletproof vest. He had a security team. Arguably, he may even had FBI support. He was in Utah, a deep, deep, deep red state. As someone who grew up LDS or Mormon, I understand how conservative that place is. And he was shot, nonetheless, in the neck, because we have a country dripping in guns. And let's not misunderstand, it's not about rights. If you think it's about rights, you're just falling for the marketing. It isn't about rights. It isn't about freedom. It's about selling guns. They want to sell you guns. They want to make money. It's about keeping the corporate gun lobby alive and keeping these corporate gun executives rich. And you're a complete sap if you think it's about freedom. It isn't. And it certainly isn't about safety. Ask Charlie Kirk's family. How did it work for you? In the most gun-loving, gun-obsessed, Old West place in America, this guy got shot. And there's nothing any of us could have done with it. You could have filled that place with more cops. Listen, a sniper can take someone out from 800 yards. This was 200 yards. We live in a culture that's obsessed with violence and obsessed with guns. And it's the only reason that's happening is because a lot of people are making money off of guns. That's it. That's it. Here's some more idiotic things this guy has said.
I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the
you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have. You wouldn't have done that before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't have done that
before. That's not who I am. That's
No.
not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.
You truly, in your heart of hearts, truly believe that this is a human being. This,
without a doubt.
without a doubt,
Yes.
this is a dolphin fetus.
So let me.
Without a doubt, a dolphin fetus is a human being. This is a human fetus. Look how similar they look, but quite different. Dolphin.
You will never.
That's how, by the way, that's how you handle Charlie Kirk, by the way. That's how you do it. You handle Charlie Kirk by exposing him for the foolish things that he says. I mean, I could go on and on and on. There's many more things he said that were horrible. He called abortion worse, much worse than the Holocaust. His words, not mine. He famously decried the empathy, and now we're supposed to have empathy for him, and we will, because that's the right thing to do. That's what a moral human being does. They show empathy when something horrific happens. You don't wish death on your political foes. Listen, and for the record, for all the people who call me a commie and a Trump hater, I wish Trump would retire and be happy. Go away. That's it. I don't want him to die. I mean, honestly, do you want people to die? I don't. I want us to beat them fair and square in the court of public opinion. And we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We haven't done it. The Democratic Party has become fearful of debate and fearful of ideological discourse. And that's not to say the Republican Party is some bastion of free thought. but they have their talking points and they're willing to go out and defend them. Are we? Then why was this guy, banned from so many places? It was wrong. It made all of these right-wing lunatics into, again, anti-heroes. And America loves a good anti-hero and a maverick. That was the wrong thing to do. Let me just play one of my personal heroes. And this is another person who said a lot of stupid things over the years. But in general, Hitchens was a brilliant person. Here's Christopher Hitchens talking about free speech. And this has always been, he's always been my standard on this subject.
Ladies and gentlemen, that every time you violate or propose to violate the free speech of someone else, you, in potentia, you're making a rod for your own back, because the other question raised by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes is simply this: who's going to decide? To whom do you award the right to decide which speech is harmful, or who is the harmful speaker, or to determine in advance what are the harmful consequences going to be that we know enough about in advance to prevent? To whom would you give this job? To whom are you going to award the task of being the censor? Anyone who wants to say anything abusive about or to me is quite free to do so, and welcome, in fact, at their own risk. But before they do that, they must have taken, as I'm sure we all should, a short refresher course in the classic texts on this matter, which are John Milton's Areopagitica being the great hill of Athens for discussion and free expression, Thomas Paine's Introduction to the Age of Reason, and I would say John Stuart Mill's essay on liberty. What they say is, it's not just the right of the person who speaks to be heard. It is the right of everyone in the audience to listen and to hear. And every time you silence somebody, you make yourself a prisoner of your own action, because you deny yourself the right to hear something. In other words, your own right to hear and be exposed is as much involved in all these cases as is the right of the other to voice his or her view. Indeed, as John Stuart Mill said, if all in society were agreed on the truth and beauty and value of one proposition, all except one person, it would be most important. In fact, it would become even more important that that one heretic be heard, because we would still benefit from his perhaps outrageous or appalling view. In more modern times, this has been put, I think, best by a personal heroine of mine, Rosa Luxemburg, who said that the freedom of speech is meaningless unless it means the freedom of the person who thinks differently. Anyone who wants...
Beautiful, beautifully said, and absolutely true through the ages. We need, as a Democratic Party, to embrace free speech, embrace debate. And don't tell me we've done this. We haven't. I have been in rooms myself where even the mildest criticism of the democratic process or the Democratic Party and how they run the democratic process and how they cheat sometimes behind the scenes it's all about, putting their people in the right places and not having a free debate is considered heresy. Absolute heresy. I've been called a colonizer, name it, whatever, cliche thing you want to say, just for saying something like, maybe the Democratic Party chairman shouldn't also be the head of the Board of Elections. I think there's a conflict of interest. God forbid that you say something like that. The Democratic Party has become just like the Republican Party in some essence, right? If you're not a Trumper, you're out, right? And that's going to hurt them too in the long run. Watch. When you kill debate, you become weak. When you do not expose yourself to environmental factors, to viruses, to whatever, if you don't take vaccines, you will get sick. And we're sick, they're sick, and our society is sick. And now this guy is dead. This guy who couldn't debate his way out of a paper bag, who got crushed in Oxford, who got crushed so many times because he used the same illogical rhetorical devices over and over again that anybody who spent 5 minutes studying actual debate could see through and expose. We were afraid of him. Okay? That's what happened. And now the guy is dead. Because instead of debating him and beating him in the court, in the the forum of public debate and in the marketplace of ideas, someone thought, oh, I got a better idea. I'll put a bullet in his neck. It's real. The state of the country is horrible. Maybe the worst it's been since the Civil War. And people have been saying that for a while, but I don't know how we get out of this unless we start having these tough conversations. This man died unjustly. No one should celebrate. No one should joke about it. It is wrong. It is anathema to what the United States is supposed to stand for. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. Even though everything you said almost I disagreed with, rest in peace. At least, you died. Your death is an indictment of America's current status and America's current respect for free speech. All right. Next, I want to talk about our Supreme Court for a second before I hang this up. I put out a thing yesterday about the end of the rule of law. I'm just going to say this quick. The Supreme Court is way off the rails, okay? It seems to me that Amy Coney Barrett is setting up, she's having these interviews where she's saying, that's what the law says. That's what the law says. And she's kind of smiling and smirking because they are going to do some major weird stuff in the years to come. They already have. They have ignored hundreds of years, literally over 100 years of precedent in some circumstances to change the law on their whim. Now, for those who don't know, Justice Scalia was the biggest advocate for this. A brilliant man, by the way, who I also disagreed with, for this idea of originalism. Basically, simply put, if it's not in the original text, we're not reading it into the text. We don't decipher the law based on what we think should be in the law or how things have evolved. If the legislators did not originally write it down, it isn't the law. It's bull because then they would do things like look at the Second Amendment in the 2008 Heller case that clearly says a well-regulated militia and somehow breathe into that the idea that there's an individual right to bear arms, which for over 100 years in America, the court never did. But in 2008, they suddenly saw it. These people that claim to be originalists, even though it says nothing like that in the Constitution, they saw it. Then in Roe versus Wade, they ignored a different problem. They ignored precedent, 50 years or 60 years almost of precedent, and they said it doesn't matter because there was this idea that the expanding rights from the Constitution, including the right to privacy, included the right to have an abortion. They said it's not in the writings, it's not in the Constitution, we don't see it, it's out. Well, now they're starting to see all kinds of weird things, including the fact that in California, you're allowed to use race as a basis to have probable cause and arrest somebody. So somebody's race. So you can infer from the race they have or the way they're speaking or their perceived race as a category or a factor to arrest somebody. It this is from the people, by the way, who've been crying for, 20 years about colorblindness. We should be a colorblind society. I don't see race, except for when I want to arrest a migrant. So the Supreme Court now wants you to swallow the fact that they think it's justified to assume someone's immigration status based on their perceived race. These are the same people who can't stomach affirmative action because it's too focused on race. Give me a break. It's such a joke. The Supreme Court is making up things as they go. They are picking and choosing based on their own political or even religious inclinations. And it really scares me as much as anything that we're facing for the future of our country because there's no reliability. It is whatever they think it is based on the day or their own whims. The idea that originalism, if it's not written down, we will be pushed by the winds of fate and circumstance and chance. Now, that's even worse because we're pushed by whatever political movement is relevant at the moment and whoever Amy Coney Barrett or these other people, Alito, whoever they want to serve in the political classes. It is completely against the rule of law and what America is supposed to represent. But this is where we're at. Okay. That's it, folks. It was a short one, but I wanted to get some stuff off my chest because I see so much nonsense online, and it's pretty sad. But let's be hopeful, and let's again Be open to debate. That's why I keep doing this show. That's why I keep talking. Free speech is what makes America work. Thanks.